Good afternoon. You're listening to Criminalist Behavior Podcast. Today we're on episode number 21, and we're going to be talking about Ronald Joseph Dominique, the Bayou Strangler. This is part 2 of the Bayou Strangler, and Ronald was an American serial killer and rapist who murdered at least 23 men and boys in the state of Louisiana between 1997 and the year 2006. If this is your first time listening, hi, my name is Sarah Soudier, and I'm your host for Criminalist Behavior Podcast. Trigger warning, this episode may contain content of a graphic nature, including descriptions of physical and sexual violence against adults, children, and animals. Listener discretion is advised. So, a little recap. Donald Joseph Dominique, he was an individual that was bullied throughout his life. He never really fit into society, and he didn't really have a place. And he was known as a homosexual, and he used to attend bars and stuff just to try to fit in. He also joined his local Lions Club and attended bingo every night that they had it. And he used to pick up all these boys and young men with false promises, leading either for sexual favors, drugs, or just a place to stay. And we got up to 12 victims. And those 12 victims, I'm going to name, just so we could do a little quick recap. 3 of them were found in St. Charles Parish, and that's the first 3 victims. This happened in the years 1997 and 1998. David Mitchell at age 19, Gary Pierre at age 20, and Larry Ranson at age 38. And in Jefferson Parish, there was a good bit. In Metairie, Oliver LeBanks, he was 27 years old. Joseph Brown was only 16 years old whenever he was killed. Bruce Williams was 18 years old, and he was in Jefferson Parish. Manuel Reed was 21 years old, and he was also in Jefferson Parish, but in Kenner. Angel Mejia was age 34 in Kenner, which is also in Jefferson Parish. Mitchell Johnson, age 34, out of Metairie in Jefferson Parish. And Michael Vincent, he was age 23, and he was found in Lafourche Parish. And Michael Vincent was victim number 10, and victim number 11 was Kenneth Randolph Jr. He was 20 years old, and he was found in Lafourche Parish. And finally, the last victim we spoke about was Anoka Jones, who was age 26, who was found in Houma, which was Terrebonne Parish. Like I said, he literally picked them up and stalked his victims. And all these victims were not covered by the press as they should have been, because the police labeled it as their vagrant lifestyle choices. Most of them had prior criminal history with petty crime like theft or drug charges. Most of them were known to have substance abuse problems. And some of them were homeless or living on the streets, bouncing from house to house. So that's where Ronald preyed on these weak victims, and he did that by strangling them, raping them, and then dropping them off in remote areas throughout the highways, cane fields, and even in dumpsters or on the side of dumpsters. So I'm going to start in the year 2002, which is victim number 13. So this is when Dominique and his sister moved to the rural community of Bayou Blue. There, he found a job as a specialist who checked the electricity levels at a local power supply area, which allowed him to travel periodically. And around this time, this is when Dominique killed 19-year-old Detrell Woods. He dumped both him and his bicycle in a reed field. Detrell's decomposed and partially naked body remained undiscovered until May 24th, 2003. And on May 24th, 2003, the story with Detrell Woods, he was 18 years old, and he left his mom's home in Houma, Louisiana to go stay with his girlfriend for the night, according to his cousin. And from the moment his friend Gary Birdwright picked Dontrell up, Margaret Woods, which is Dontrell's mom, had an uneasy feeling for some reason, just in the gut of her stomach. Margaret told Dontrell that she just had a bad feeling that something bad was going to happen to him and tried begging him just to stay home. Dontrell told his mom that she was worrying for nothing and that he didn't need to retrieve his bike from Gary's house that he left over there previously. So he needed to retrieve his bike, and that's what he told his mom he was going to do. His bike was at Gary's house, and he stated that he left and promised her that he would return the following day, and that would be a promise that he would never be able to keep, because the next day, on May 25th, 2003, the body of 18-year-old Dontrell Woods was found by two men that was riding dirt bikes near a cane field off Highway 56. And Highway 56 runs from Cocodrie, Louisiana, through Little Caillou and Chauvin, and it ends near Houma city limits, where it turns into a street known as East Main Street. And Dontrell was found lying next to his bicycle. The two men that stumbled across his body ran and called the police and stated that they found a puffy black man's body on the side of the highway. Investigators arrived on scene and determined that the body of Dontrell was sitting there for quite some time, and it was extremely hot and muggy, that, humidifying Louisiana heat, that they noticed decomposition was already starting to settle in. And if you ever been or traveled to Louisiana, or hell, if you live there, you know the humidity is extremely brutal. It's really, really brutal. No, we don't get high temperatures like those northern states or Texas at 120 degrees, or Arizona in the deserts. No, we don't get that. But something at 90 degrees or 100 degrees with that humidity, it's smothering. It's molding like a sauna, but worse. It's hella bad. And decomposition obviously takes place more rapidly with these temperatures. So Detective Freeman with the Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Office stated that the shoes were removed from Dontrell and his feet were surprisingly clean and not full of dirt, which you would expect if he would have been walking barefoot, that his feet would have dirt on them and they will be dirty. So this led Detective Freeman to believe that he was killed in one location and just dropped off here. The tires on Wood's bike were also clean, and they didn't have no tire tracks in the dirt, which would mean whoever dropped Woody's body here carried him and the bicycle and just dumped them both there. The tires on Wood's bike were not dirty, so it wasn't traveling to the dirt, so there was no other means on how that would have got there but somebody carrying both the bike and the body to that location. The preliminary investigation did not show signs of defensive wounds or any other foul play findings. It wasn't until the coroner dissected Dontrell Woods' body that they learned that he died of manual strangulation. And friends and family of Dontrell stated that he was a slow learner and he really didn't catch on to things like a normal person, and this would make him more vulnerable and just a perfect candidate for Ronald Dominique. Detective Thornton described investigations of these young men as something they should not hold on to, and not to waste too much of their time investigating the deaths of these types of people with their vagrant lifestyles. Seriously, how could you tell someone not to waste their time because these people don't mean nothing because of the lifestyle that they live? That's not up to you to decide. You have a job to serve and protect the community. You have a job to investigate what happened, why these individuals are being murdered. You don't have right to judge them based on the lifestyle that they live. They shouldn't have died in the circumstances, so that's just wrong in every way, shape, and form. So the cause of death, like I said, was deemed to be asphyxiation by manual strangulation, and until Dominique's arrest, it was considered to be caused as accidental in nature because Dontrell Woods was known to suffer from asthma. So they just shook it up to be, oh, he died because he had a severe asthma attack, and that's it. Even though there were signs of manual strangulation, how can you cake that up to asthma? No, it doesn't make sense. He didn't die from a freaking asthma attack. Manual strangulation means exactly that. He was killed with bare hands. Like, are you serious? So, a year and a half passed before Dominique decided to look for his next victim after he was let go from the produce company he was working at. He then took a job working with a maintenance company for half a year before taking another job as a meter reader in Bayou Blue. So he was jumping from job to job. And it was in the Salmons in October, which was post-Hurricane Matthews. It was October 2004, and this is when Dominique lured 46-year-old Larry Matthews to his house with the promise of drugs. But during the process, Matthews lost consciousness due to an overdose. After which, this is when Ronald Dominique raped and strangled him. He took complete advantage of the situation, and the victim couldn't fight back. He was unconscious. He later then dumped Matthews' body 20 miles away from the crime scene. Nobody initially reported Matthews as missing since he was known to be homeless, and his identity later had to be established through fingerprints. Jeff Murrow went to view the damage around town, and this was, like I said, after Hurricane Matthews done landed. So they were going around searching all the damages that the hurricane may have caused with all the debris, the tree branches, and, to those homes, and flooding. And this is when he came across the body near a pond, who then went and talked to his neighbor, who was known as Dawn Jerome. And Dawn was a criminalist with the St. Charles Parish Sheriff's Office. And Dawn and Jeff headed to investigate the scene in which they seen the body. Dawn discovered that the body was drenched. It may have been there while Hurricane Matthew was rolling on through in the Salmons, or it could have been dropped there by the storm. So this is when they decided to phone the police. Detectives were called to the scene, and the body was picked up and brought to the coroner's office. The autopsy was done by Dr. Frank Johnson, and Johnson stated that there was an extreme amount of force used on the victim. The victim had indications of being beaten, as he had blunt force trauma on his lower back, shoulders, and buttocks. The coroner also indicated that there was blood clotted in the muscles of the neck, which indicated strangulation. The cause of death was listed as a, get ready for this, y'all, accidental cocaine overdose. Even though there was pure evidence showing strangulation, which I might add does not make sense. You have pure evidence showing strangulation. The coroner stated it was strangulation, but let's rule it as accidental cocaine overdose because he had cocaine in his system. Shady police work at its finest. So the fingerprints made the discovery that the body belonged to the victim, 46-year-old Larry Matthews. Police stated that Larry was homeless, and his brother stated that he knew of no one that would ever want to hurt Larry, and that his death became a huge shock to him. Detectives with the St. Charles Police Department received a call from Houma Police Department stating that they had a person detained by the name of Jim Jermaine, who stated he had information about the death of 46-year-old Matthews. Jim stated he was hanging out with a friend in Thibodeau, and Larry Matthews showed up, and they had a conversation about transactions involving drugs. Jim stated that he had a conversation with Larry about how Larry knew where he could score some drugs and or sex workers. Larry stated that he would need to borrow a car to go get the drugs, and Jim handed him the keys to his car. Jim stated that he had to file a police report because Larry Matthews never returned with his car, so he wanted to file a police report saying that his car was stolen and or missing. This story was the only told by Jim Germain. We do not know that Jim did file a police report about his car being missing or stolen for sure, but the car was found. And when Jim's car was found, the car was said to be occupied by 4 young occupants who, when police inquired about the car, all fled from the scene. The police then impounded Jim's car, and Jim was finally able to get his car back. The police stuck with this original declaration for the autopsy that it was for accidental cocaine overdose, which is complete biased information at its finest. Anyways, this is just original declaration and just freaking crazy. Like, how? Why? It doesn't make sense to me, y'all. Like, how can they do that with the fact he was strangled? There is evidence to prove that this guy, Jim, is saying that he lent the victim his car and 4 victims fled the scene when cops were inquiring about the car, but yet a cocaine overdose? Make it make sense, y'all. So, that was that victim, okay? Now, we're going to get on to Michael Barnett. He was 21 years old at the time that he died, and Michael would be victim number 15. He was the first white victim of Michael Dominique. All the other ones were of African American descent. And Michael's body was found on October 24th, 2004. And it was late October, in which Gator Storage owners in the Houma area were contacted by some tenants because some of their storages had this very, very foul smell coming from just around their storage, and they were actually able to pinpoint exactly what storage unit this smell was coming from. And the storage in question was located, and it was supposedly locked. Y'all want to know how the storage was locked? A bread tie. Yes, y'all, you heard correctly. It was locked with a bread tie. So, nothing. Nothing really holding this storage locker. It wasn't a padlock as you would normally come across that most people use to secure their belongings, but it's a freaking bread tie. Like, huh? There was some sort of wetness that was protruding from the storage unit, and it had a slight appearance to be blood or something of that color. Could have been rust. So this is when the owner decided to open up the unit, and this is when they discovered a dead body. It was a man that appeared to be in his late 40s or early 50s. Houma Police Department was then contacted, and they were assisted by Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Office in their investigation. There were no security cameras or alarms that could help aid the police in their investigation. And it was just a list of tenants who rented certain units. And all in all, the police were given a list of 50 tenants to determine if the man in the storage unit rented that particular unit, or if anyone knew of any information regarding that unit. This led police to a dead end in determining who the victim was. The body was then brought to the coroner's office, which was very, very difficult for the coroner to determine anything due to the mass state of decomposition the body was in. The storage lockers were not equipped with air conditioners, and the humidity and Louisiana heat advanced the stages of decomposition on the body. The victim determined to be in his 20s and not the 50s as previously suggested, and it was a white male, but due to the decomposition, this is why they figured the man to be of 50 or 60 years old and not 20. That ought to tell you enough. Either A, the body's been there for quite some time, or B, it's just that horrid Louisiana heat and humidity that caused this. There were no obvious signs of foul play at first, and the body then was placed in a refrigerator in hopes someone would soon claim the body, and they could possibly identify who this victim was. So one day, it was a worried friend named Frances Barber of Michael Barnett. She phoned the police department and stated that she has not seen her friend in a few days. Frances stated she last saw Michael on October 24th of 2004 when he told her he had plans with a girl that he was going to meet at the fire station nearby. Frances was able to identify the body that was found, and it was identified by a dragon tattoo that Michael was known to have had. She stated she had no doubts that the person found was her friend Michael Barnett. Detectives then headed to the fire station that was mentioned by Frances and where Michael would be supposedly meeting this girl in hopes to find something to help lead their investigation and determine who, what, how, and why this even happened. Everyone at the fire station stated they never saw Michael, which led detectives to believe that he never made it to the fire station to meet this girl. He never made it to his destination. The next attempt in finding out information by investigators was to contact Michael Barnett or his family and to see if they could actually locate Michael Barnett or if it would give them leads in their investigation. So investigators learned that Michael Barnett was not from Louisiana, but he moved to Louisiana from Mississippi a few years back prior to whenever he was found, and he was known to distance himself from his family at times, just chasing different girls and really just doing his own thing and living his life how he wanted. Detectives stated that after speaking with the family, that he stated the family was concerned about the welfare of Michael, as though he would go a little while without talking, but they haven't heard or talked to him in several weeks, and they were growing concerned. This was unlike Michael to not reach out to someone during this time. Two friends known to hang around Michael stated that Michael just got him a place, and he had a roommate by the name of Dorian Bates. And they told detectives that if something happened to Michael, Bates would be involved, as he was not a friendly person and his lifestyle suggested extreme violence. So now they got a potential suspect to look into. And detectives then headed to the new place known to be for Michael Barnett in hopes to obtain any evidence that could use to help identify the John Doe they found in the storage unit and the body lying on the autopsy table. And they were going to do this by means of fingerprints or a DNA. The apartment barely had anything in it, and it looked as if nothing was ever really moved into it. So it was like really vacant. Like they bought the apartment and just had a couple of items in there, but nothing to suggest anybody was literally living there. And Detective Dawn did a little background searching on Michael Barnett and discovered that he grew up in a group home, and she was sure that they would have some type of medical records of Michael that she may be able to use to help identify his body to see if this body on the autopsy table was in fact Michael Barnett, as Dawn claimed. And it was determined that while Michael was in a group home, he was seen by a dentist. Sadly, though, that dentist that Michael seen as a child in a group home sold his business, and he was retired at this time. So, Detective Dawn did not give up here. She kept on, which, go Detective Dawn. She reached out to the new owners of the previous dentist office in hopes that they would have the medical records of the patients that were seen by the retired dentist. It was a long shot, but hey, I mean, commend her for trying. Y'all, as luck would have it, Dawn hit the jackpot. Yes, the new owners still had the medical records, and they were able to locate the file for Michael Barnett. And they faxed it to the Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Office, in which this was used to confirm the identity of the body. How lucky is that? Good for her, as she was very adamant at retrieving some type of information. She didn't stop whenever, oh crap, the business was sold, the owner retired. Now, let's go off of hope, like maybe they still have these records. And glad that they did. So, this is when the body of Michael Barnett was identified to be the body on the autopsy table. It would be the first white male that became a victim to Ronald Dominique. He also broke his pattern of leaving the bodies in an open area like their dumpster or field, but he tried to lock the body inside a storage unit. And so poorly so, because he used a bread tie. Like, you're not really locking this body. And with a bread tie on that locker, you think they would be able to retrieve some type of fingerprints or something, right? Because you got to twist that little thingy. But let's see. So the list of tenants that rented the lockers turned up dry, and there was no one that was said to have been renting this particular storage locker. Law enforcement believed that the case could be part of the serial killer, but due to the pattern and the fact that this victim was white, they really could not confirm that this was the same person that may have killed the individual Michael Barnett. Detectives would have to wait until more evidence flooded in and see where all the dots could be connected. So now, we're going to jump to the morning of February 20th, 2005. A father and his young son were just enjoying their day with one another, riding a dirt bike, when they came across a horrific discovery. They were riding their dirt bikes behind the Home of Shriners Club off Moffett Road, and those who live in the area, we know it as the Air Base Road, and this was in Houma, Louisiana. And they came across something that appeared to be a pile of clothes on the ground. And as they approached, they noticed that this was not just a pile of clothes, but yeah, it was in fact a body of a young man. Now, the father did not know if the young man was just sleeping, as if he might have been drunk or overdosed on drugs, but either way, he didn't want to disturb the scene. The detectives that were already investigating the other case of Michael Barnett were the first ones to arrive on the scene after the father and son reported the body. There, Detective Simon described that the victim was lying down on his side, wearing only a pair of blue jeans and socks. So no shirt, no shoes, just a pair of blue jeans and socks. Detective Simon stated that the victim had visible marks around his neck that indicated that this is yet just another familiar scene. The victim was strangled and could be yet another victim's life claimed by the Bayou Strangler, aka Ronald Dominique. But as Detective Simon turned the victim over, he discovered that he knew exactly who this victim was. The victim was 22-year-old Leon Lerat, which, if you remember, on the first part of the Bayou Strangler, episode number 20, this is a suspect in the Anoka Jones case that happened in October 2022. Leon Lerat was known to be living on the streets at the time of his death and was also the last known person to see Anoka. Now, Leon was also known on the streets as T. Paul, and he was on and off Bastrop Street in Houma, Louisiana, where his sister and mother lived, and one of his good friends and neighbor, Michael Soudier. And in case that last name sounds familiar, Soudier, yeah, that is my brother. So Michael Soudier, which we call him T. Mike, was good friends with T. Paul, and they all lived on Bastrop Street, and this was something that was very unexpected. T. Paul was described as an alcoholic vagrant who had previously lived with two of the other victims, and Barnett and Anoka Jones were those victims. And he was even considered the prime suspect in Jones's murder, as he was the last person to see him prior to the former disappearance. T. Paul also had a police record with misdemeanor crimes that would be known to associate with the local drug dealers, and he also had a substance abuse problem. Detective Simon tracked down all known associates that T. Paul was known to hang out with, and all of them stated that they have not heard or seen from Leon in several days. Detectives also spoke with Leon's family, and they stated that they didn't speak to T. Paul or Leon. I'm going to use those interchangeably because I know him as T. Paul, so I didn't even know his real name was Leon, y'all. That's how much I knew. But the detectives followed a trail from speaking with friends and family that led them to the famous crack motel in Houma, Sugar Bowl Motel. Yeah. We call that a crack motel. It is nothing good, y'all. Stay away from that area if you've never been to Louisiana, especially in Houma. Like, hello, no. You don't go there unless you're looking to score some drugs or sex or venereal diseases, because it's just a cesspool. Ugh, yuck. So, this motel is known for hourly rates and for sex workers as well as drug users to rent. You can rent this hotel by the freaking hour. It's just disgusting. Ugh. It is horrible, and a place that you would never want to stay in with your family. Like, hell no. If y'all need some recommendations in the Houma area, message your girl. I got you, because that is not the area, boo. That is not the area. And this hotel is located at the end of New Orleans Boulevard and East Main Street in Houma, Louisiana, which is not far from Terrebonne General Medical Center, which is one of the local hospitals in the area. The staff at the motel stated that T. Paul was seen a few days ago with another white man, and they were traveling in an older model SUV, possibly known as a Suburban. This is when detectives really started hitting the streets and talking to all those associated with the motel and that whole scene. Back at the morgue, coroners were working on the body of Leon, aka T. Paul, completing that autopsy. The coroner determined that Leon may have been dead for at least 24 to 36 hours at the time his body was found. So, anywhere between a day or a day and a half that he was just found laying on the side off of Moffett Road by the air base. And he was found by this father and son riding their dirt bikes. I remember this like it was crazy. I remember my brother calling me and telling me, hey, look, they just found my boy T. Paul. Somebody killed him. I'm like, wait, what? Huh? What you mean? Like, we seen him not that long ago. What you mean somebody killed him? And we didn't know that there was this freaking mass serial killer out on the prowl, because all of that was kind of hush-hush, except for like in Jefferson Parish, or, you know, further up near New Orleans and stuff by the airport, because that's where most of the previous crimes took place, in St. Charles Parish. So up in little town Houma, Louisiana, we had no freaking clue they had a serial killer out, and more or less that would literally kill someone we actually knew. So it was just freaking plain ludicrous. Coroner stated that T. Paul had been hemorrhaging. They had hemorrhaging coming from his eyes, which obviously is typical in cases involving strangulation. Upon further investigation of the body, it was also learned that he was sexually assaulted at the time of his murder. And y'all, T. Paul was not a homosexual, bi, or gay no. T. Paul was not that type of person. So he just took advantage of T. Paul. Like, T. Paul was known to be on substances like marijuana or pills, or hell, even like other harder drugs. But he was not that type to jump in truck with a man, or no. So how did this happen with Ronald? I don't have to be a promise of drugs or something to that nature. There's no way it was for sexual favors. That's all I'm gonna say. So upon further investigation, coroners were able to determine that T. Paul was severely drunk at the time of his death, which would have made strangling him very easy than a sober person. With all of this evidence, the detective knew that this would be the work of the serial killer lurking around the different parishes, and this would be the second white victim. Yeah, the second white victim. 2 months later, in April, Ronald met 31-year-old August Watkins. August was a homeless man who Dominique lured to his truck with promises for an overnight stay. So he wanted to give him a place to stay, give him, a good warm place to stay with a shower, a bed to lay in for the night. And after Watkins ended up in Dominique's trailer, Dominique gave him some alcohol, and he offered him to have sex with a supposed female acquaintance. And this is when Dominique, I don't know how he got this to happen, but he tied up August and then raped and strangled him. August Watkins was found in a field behind a work release center in Lafourche Parish. And he was known for his petty crimes by police, and he was just a young black man. He had a known history of not being able to hold down a job and usually living on the street, sleeping at house to house. And at the time of August's death, he was sleeping on the stairs at the tunnel, which is the Intercoastal Waterway tunnel off of that's Grand Caillou Road. So he was sleeping on the stairs, which it's just so sad that people have this, and that there are homeless people in the world, regardless of what choices they made. Like, no one should be without a safe place to sleep at night. That's just hard for me. But he was sleeping on the stairs at the tunnel, and he was kicked from his apartment that he was previously living in. The cause of death was linked to the other victims and was ruled a homicide by strangulation. August marked the 17th victim for the serial killer, in which Police Chief Patrick Boudreaux at the time decided to finally hold a press conference. He spoke at the press conference saying, "There is much evidence to these crimes happening in a short time span to lead me to believe that we have a suspected serial killer in our area." All of the unsolved murders from the different jurisdictions and parishes were discussed, and that every law enforcement agency was working with one another to track down this serial killer and throw away the key on this guy. This is when they finally started talking about a task force, because a task force needed to be created to track the serial killer down, which should have been done a long time ago. Why would it take up to 17 victims before this even freaking happened is beyond my scope of even trying to figure out why. Anyways, federal authorities determined that due to the lifestyle of these young men, that it would be too insubstantial to spend the funds on a statewide task force. A task force was denied for this case, which is obviously outraging. This is when, due to the pressure of the local media through the state covering the stories, the community and public was talking. There was something that needed to be done, especially in Houma, Louisiana, and all these little rural areas like Metairie, St. Charles Parish. This ain't no major freaking city. We don't have freaking serial killers just coming out the wazoo. Like, this shit is not normal. So, yeah, you need to get off your ass and develop this task force, because obviously you're not getting anywhere closer. We got 17 victims and you still ain't caught the damn guy. Get off your ass. So, due to the pressure of the local media and all the public being outraged, they decided to actually take the advice and develop a freaking task force, y'all. But the task force started with case Oliver LeBanks, which was the fourth victim, and that occurred in 1998. So whenever the task force was created, it wasn't created whenever the fourth victim was killed. It was created when the 17th victim, August Watkins, was killed. But they started at the fourth victim case, Oliver LeBanks, in their investigation to track the serial killer down. Just so I clear up that confusion, because I just confused myself trying to explain that. Yeah, I'm a blonde, but disregard. Anyways, they started with the Oliver LeBank's case, and this is whenever they worked themselves all the way up to the current case with August Watkins. And after Watkins' corpse was discovered, they began to finally consider for the first time that a serial killer was active in the Kenner and Houma area, since all the murders demonstrated a striking similar motive. This case was then handed over to the Federal Bureau Investigation, also known as what? Duh, FBI, for a task force to finally be created. It was almost 2 weeks after killing August Watkins that Ronald just had to strike again. He had that itch. This is when 23-year-old Kirk Cunningham's body would be discovered. It was on April 28th of 2005. A farmer discovered a body in a drainage ditch about 50 yards from Highway 307. And Highway 307, in case you're not familiar with the area, it runs from the east of Chack Bay to Highway 182 in Raceland. It's a total of about 19.35 miles in total. And Kurt's body was face down in the mud for what investigators believe to be about 5 days. And the cause and time of death was obviously unable to be determined because, as previously discussed, Louisiana heat and humidity adds to the decomposition and rapidly increases that than in a normal area. So, the cause and time of death were unable to be determined, and the coroner hypothesized that the cause of death may be strangulation, but he could not make a definitive response in regards. There were no other causes of death that the coroner thought may be possible, that it could be indicated that it could have been something else. So I think he was just going with a gut feeling, or hell, he was just going with the motive that's been happening: strangled and raped. To each his own. So Kirk Cunningham, a little backstory on him: he was born November 27th of 1981 to his mother Cindy Collins and his father Richard Toops. He had 3 brothers named Richard Jr., Scotty, and Christopher, and one stepbrother named Alvin Jr. And he had 4 sisters, so he had a rather large family. His sisters' names: Sky, Joelle, Jessica, and Samantha. Kurt Cunningham bounced house from house. He lived on the streets just like the other victims, and he was arrested previously on petty crimes. And he was known to be a resident in Thibodaux, Louisiana, which is Lafourche Parish, whenever he was murdered. And on May 2005, they had a newspaper article that came out in reference to several mugshots of depicting that a serial killer may be present in the area. And these mugshots were of the 5 victims. Victims were all strangled, living on the streets, and did drugs and so forth. Had them vagrant lifestyles that they love to just harp on. And I'm going to post that in our show notes so you can see that article that came out. It has the 5 victims, like I said, starting with victim number 4 all the way up to 9. So you can see what article came out. And later that summer of 2005, a body of 28-year-old Alonzo Hogan in St. Charles Parish would be discovered. Alonzo's body was found on Louisiana Highway 306 and Rivet Lane in Bayou Gauche. It was Saturday, July 2nd of 2005. Dominique lured Alonzo under the pretense of them having sex with one another. With a female friend of Dominique. Not with Dominique, I'm sorry. And Alonzo would never be able to meet his daughter. He never got to see himself and his baby girl. A striking affirmation Alonzo's sister, Cynthia Zamora, says that she can't even look at Alonzo's 5-year-old daughter without the pains of absence rushing to the forefront of her consciousness, that her brother would never be a part of her life. And Alonzo's sister, Cynthia, stated she is just like her father, and it hurts her every time she sees his daughter. She wasn't even born when Alonzo got killed, so he never got to meet his daughter. He wasn't ever here to see his little girl. The last time that Cynthia saw her brother, she stated that he left her house on Friday, July 1st, 2005 on his bicycle. And on his bike, it looked like it was fresh clean, like he was washing a car. He left on a journey to kill time while waiting on Cynthia's ex-husband to arrive and join him on a fishing trip. Alonzo was described as a quiet person, which everyone knew out there. He was very few in words. If you didn't say nothing to him, he wasn't going to say anything to you. All he liked was his little hobbies, like fishing. He would fish every day if he could, said Cynthia. And if he didn't fish, he would ride his bike every day. That was a car to him. He would ride his bike to Houma, ride his bike to Thibodeau. He would ride his bike everywhere. And his sister described that Alonzo was a little on the slow side, but he never bothered anyone. He had his little friends he would hang out with and stuff, but other than that, he would just literally stay to himself. He never gave anybody any trouble, and he really never bothered anybody, so nobody ever really bothered or messed with him. And I can relate to Cynthia and how she feels about her brother, because my son is the exact same way. He doesn't mess with no one. He keeps to himself. He has very few minimum friends because he doesn't like all that drama and all of that good stuff. But he's the sweetest, nicest kid you know that would ever help you. And it seems as if Alonzo is just that person. So the fully clothed body of a young black man was found in Lafourche Parish on July 2nd, 2005. It was on a Wednesday night. And I'm sorry, I said the wrong date. The fully clothed body of a young black man was found on Wednesday night in Lafourche Parish, November 9th, 2005. Not July. That was whenever it was all lured. So Dominique met with Alonzo on July 2nd, 2005, but the body wasn't found until November 9th, so a few months. And it was discovered by a man riding a four-wheeler in a weed field. The grisly discovery came about 5 p.m., and it was alongside Baja Trail off Chinsolm Trail near Burma Road in the St. Charles community, south of Thibodeau, Louisiana. 5-foot weeds nearly obscured the body, which was lying face up just off the road and clothed in dark blue jeans, a leather belt, red shirt, and white sneakers. It was not evident who the man was or how he died to law enforcement officials originally, but it was stated that the body had been there for at least 2 days, and it was likely that he was killed somewhere else and dropped off here. And the remoteness of this location and the position of his body indicated that he would have just been dumped there. And that's what the sheriff stated at that time. Although there was no missing persons reports in the Lafourche area, that matched the man's description, there was one report in Terrebonne Parish that seemed to fit it. So we're in Lafourche Parish in St. Charles, but a victim was reported missing in Terrebonne Parish. A family member reported a Terrebonne Parish man missing on Sunday, said Sheriff Weber, and he would not release the missing man's name, but he did say that he was last seen Saturday, November 5th, 2005. Now, after the body was picked up, brought to the coroner's house, it was determined that 17-year-old Wayne Smith would be the identity of the body. He was from Terrebonne Parish, and Dominique lured him under the pretense of them having sex with one of his female friends. A 17-year-old, I mean, you promise them sex, yeah, they jumping on it. He lived on 311 Roselawn Street, and Roselawn Street is near East Street, off Grand Caillou Road in Houma, Louisiana, which is not that far from the air base in which T. Paul's body was found, just so y'all know. And the victim was discovered in a drainage ditch near Grand Caillou Road. And unlike most of the previous victims, Hogan and Smith had no prior criminal convictions, and they weren't known to use drugs. So Hogan and Wayne Smith were not substance abusers at all, and they weren't in trouble with the law. Hogan was determined to be raped by Dominique prior to his death, pre-mortem, while there was no traces of semen found. And Smith's corpse has been disposed of in a canal where it's severely decomposed when the body was found later. A farmer in Napoleonville then spotted a skull in the middle of a gravel road in a sugarcane field. Police found the rest of the remains at the bottom of a nearby drainage canal. This would determine to be Chris DeVille's body. The last time family members saw Chris was whenever he was cleaning his mother's freezer in Houma after Hurricane Katrina. It was more than a month later that the 40-year-old's body was found in Napoleonville. Assumption Parish Mike Wagasback announced that the body was of Christopher DeVille. DeVille's sister, Cynthia... I'm sorry, something was just crawling on me, and I don't like it. Ugh. So, Cynthia Barabin, which was Chris DeVille's sister, stated that her brother told relatives he was leaving town after the hurricane, but he just didn't let them know where he was going. We don't know if he left with someone and didn't think to call anyone, she stated. But in September 2005, they would discover 40-year-old Chris DeVille, who was trying to hitchhike out of Napoleonville following Hurricane Katrina. He was lured by Ronald Dominique, and he dumped Chris's body in a reed field after raping and strangling him. Chris's skeletal remains were discovered the following month and identified by relatives only to ID cards and other belongings left beside the body. The body was too decomposed for them to actually identify him by his body. They identified him by the objects surrounding his body, which that could have just been dropped and coincidentally been at the scene. So that's circumstantial evidence at its best. I don't think that's a legit identification. But Chris DeVille was survived by his parents, Fanny Coleman and Albert Barabin Sr., and they were from Houma. They had Chris Harvey and Tyler Wellbanks, and 2 daughters, LaToya Harvey and Jasmine Harvey. 10 brothers, Albert and wife Bernita, Michael and wife Wanda, Eric, Kevin, Lester, Jerome, and Juan. Y'all, that's a huge family. Let me just say. 10 brothers? Chris, yeah, okay. So anyways, he also had 1 sister named Cynthia and 1 granddaughter. And now we're going to jump into late November 2005. This case, I still have some very bad feelings about this case because, again, I knew this victim. I was more closer to this victim than I was of T. Paul. And this victim, Lord have mercy, wrong place, wrong time. This would be 21-year-old Nicholas Pellegrin. He was found in Lafourche Parish. His body was badly decomposed, and he was found in a weed field in south of Thibodeau. It was a cane field, and his family and I personally am adamant that the man drug dealing associates are responsible for his death, not Ronald Dominique. Although Ronald Dominique confessed to this, T. Nick, which Nicholas Pellegrin was also known by T. Nick was known to do recreational drugs and mostly marijuana. He did drink and stuff and did a few pain pills and whatnot, but he was a rather good kid. He always had a smile on his face, and he was just an awesome person to be around. He wasn't a little street punk or anything like that. He was a general nice person. And it was said that the girlfriend that he had at the time was responsible for something happening to him, because it was a drug deal that went bad. Apparently, Nick owed somebody for drugs, and it was said that this guy named Rashmeat was the one that killed him due to a $400 debt for the drugs. How did they determine that Ronald Dominique was responsible for this? Probably because shady-ass detective work. That's what I'm going with. Shady-ass detective work and police work, because they didn't feel like doing a damn investigation, because the so-called vagrant freaking lifestyles all these victims were supposedly known to have. Yeah, they did drugs. Whatever. Who doesn't try drugs every now and then? I mean, especially marijuana. Seriously? Somebody always tried marijuana at least once in their life, or some type of drug, whether it's a cigarette, whatever, once in their life. And marijuana happened to be T. Nick's drug of choice, as well as alcohol. None of these victims freaking deserved any of this. And T. Nick definitely didn't deserve this. I mean, damn, bruh. Still, after all these years, it still affects me. And I can't even imagine how his sister, Jody, was feeling. And I do know how some of his other family members, his father, Lulu, God bless his heart, his uncle, Cookie, his mama, Veronica, his aunt, Sheila, like, his cousin, Chris, his brother, Pumpkin, a.k.a. Lewis. Like, I can't even imagine what is going on, what went through their heads. I can know how I felt whenever I was told about it. And I was pissed, because I literally just seen T-Nick. I literally just seen him not that long ago. He literally pulled up in my driveway. He was BSing with Chris. And he's like, when you gonna drop that dude and take on a date with me? He wanted to take me to the movies. He was such a character, y'all. He made me laugh. He had a great smile. And y'all, he didn't deserve this. He so freaking didn't deserve this. And I really highly doubt that Ronald Dominique is responsible. But, of course, according to investigators, and apparently Ronald Dominique admitting to this BS, they wanted to declare that T. Nick's death was, in fact, part of the Bayou Strangler. So, like I said, his body was found in a cane field in Thibodeau in Lafourche Parish. And his family is adamant that it was a drug deal that went bad. The body of Nicholas Pellegrin was found November 9th, 2005 at the Edge Field near Baja Trail off Chilsom Road in St. Charles community of Lafourche Parish. Veronica Guidry, which was T. Nick's mom, stated they were all on drugs. They all did drugs together. They did everything in the book together. You name it, they done it. And that's pretty legit. Further, T. Nick's mom, Veronica, stated that police investigators know who killed Nicholas Pellegrin, and she is frustrated by the lack of an arrest in the case. And hell yeah, we all are. We all are. During the investigation into the death, T. Nick's relatives told the police that shortly before his death, that he borrowed $400 from a local drug dealer, and he had missed the payment date, after which he began to receive death threats. $400, y'all. a freaking death threat off $400. You're gonna kill somebody for $400? Are you kidding? So prior to Dominique's capture, Pellegrin's death was wrongfully thought to be drug related. Repeated attempts to discuss Pellegrin's murder with the Lafourche Parish Sheriff's Office were rebuffed. Authorities there referred inquiries back to the Attorney General's office. And as Veronica, T. Nick's mom, stated, if it was their kid, they would be right there trying to find them. To me, it's like, I'm nothing. I get mad, I get angry, I get frustrated, I start cursing people out. At this time, it was 6 months since T. Nick has died. He's dead. How long this has to go on? The last link that T. Nick's family and friends had was a cryptic message from an unknown source downloaded from his cell phone. It was a voicemail that was left on Lulu's phone. And Lulu was his dad. T. Nick tried reaching out to his father when this happened. I remember talking to T. Nick's dad after we found out that his body was found. And he was breaking down. We were all crying with one another. And he played this phone message. And you could hear water in the background. And T. Nick pleading for his life. Horrible, y'all. Horrible. Like, I can't even describe that feeling. To be in that place. And I can't even describe how angry I was that no one was there to help T. Nick. No one was there. His father regretted not picking up the phone or being around the phone to answer that phone call for his son pleading for help. Maybe we could have found out something sooner. Maybe, all these what ifs come to mind. But this is not right. T. Nick always kept in contact with someone. Like I said, we talked to him 3 days prior to finding out he was missing. And though the phone was never recovered, detectives were able to access a voicemail message that they think was recorded the night of his death. In the recording, Pumpkin, aka Lewis, stated that there's sound of wind blowing, people talking, but it's really hard to make out their words. But it says, someone says, what's going on, what's happening, then something about a hospital. Then all of a sudden, it just cuts out. The family doesn't know why someone would have called T. Nick's phone and recorded a message like that. It could have been an accident, or they speculate perhaps someone wanted the message to be heard later. So, Pumpkin stated that he last saw T. Nick on the Saturday before he disappeared. He noticed that his windshield wipers didn't work, so he took out the truck to his younger brother, watching as he yanked out all the fuses out the fuse box and added some in their place, and he finally got the wipers going again. So it was a burnt fuse why Pumpkin's windshield wipers weren't working, and T. Nick helped him change it. And Pumpkin first indicated that something might have happened to his brother when he didn't hear from him that night. Like I said, T. Nick always kept in contact, especially with his brother. They were very close. And his friends and other family, they were all really close. And the cell phone was T. Nick's pride and joy. He carried that thing with him everywhere he went. And he borrowed friends' chargers to keep it always charged. And accidentally, he blew up one during the post-hurricane power outages trying to recharge it with a car battery. Y'all, redneck ingenuity at its finest. You know that saying, if you can't duck it, fuck it? Yeah. Straight motives here, y'all. So, the brothers, Pumpkin and T. Nick, stayed in constant phone communication, even when T. Nick was working offshore. So, not only hearing from his brother struck Pumpkin as unusual. Pumpkin stated that his brother would call every day at all hours of the night, which, yeah, even at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, he was still calling. Every time I would call his phone, he would answer it and talk to me, said Pumpkin. Phone records showed that the last call T. Nick made was at 11:09 p.m., November 5th. He called a girl, talked briefly, and he told her he would call back. He didn't. The girl tried to call him, kept calling till 2 or 3 a.m., but there was no answer. Dominique had been the subject of veiled threats in days before his death, his family stated. He got out of jail the Monday before his death on a switched plate charge. After his release, his brother stated that he was told to keep Dominique out of the Ashland neighborhood because people were after him. Because this was in Ashland North, and he was staying there with this chick, and he needed to get out the area because people were looking for him. On a Friday, the day before he went missing, one of his enemies came by and told Dominique that he was going to get his cousin to come deal with him. That's what Pumpkin remembered Dominique telling him. Veronica, Dominique's mom, described some of her dead son's acquaintances as best enemies, constantly in and out of quarrels and friendships. They always wanted to fight, but then they all hung back together. And, yeah. The Pellinger family, especially that side, like Dominique, Pumpkin, Chris, all of them, yeah. They all were known to fight and stuff, but, like, they didn't go out looking for the trouble, just they dealt with trouble as it came to them. So, and the family talks about Dominique's drug use with reluctance, and they're upset by the negative associations with the man that they love and knew as much more than a drug addict, because Dominique was more than a drug addict. He was a brother, a son, an amazing friend. Like, he was a great person. But they believe that the drugs may have led to his death. He owed a guy money, and a guy caught up with him. And Dominique and his friends and the drug dealers all just wrong place, wrong time. Why? Him and his friends killed Dominique $400. $400. Like a death. $400. That gang he was hanging around with, they know what happened. And like Veronica stated, how the hell can they go to bed at night? The family believes that authorities are allowing Dominique to be linked to an investigation into the possibility of a serial killer because they haven't put together enough evidence to arrest a real killer. 100% accurate. They didn't. They just put it in with the rest. Why? Because it was easy. They knew they could just pin this shit on the damn serial killer. They didn't do the damn investigation, getting the person who was actually responsible for Dominique's death. Shady shit. Shady shit. His habits made him an unlikely victim of Ronald Dominique. Dominique hated to walk places, but he wouldn't ride with strangers, and he was never shy about calling family members for a ride. No, he could have called me. I wouldn't want to pick his ass up. Just saying. Dominique was not missing clothing like the other dead men who had been murdered by the serial killer. He was fully dressed. He was only missing his wallet and the cell phone and a red hat with Dominique written in baby blue letters. He still had his $200 earrings in his ears. So the motive of theft was not there. It was just a fucking killing of $400. Drives me, y'all. This shit drives me. Part of the family's frustration is that they heard varied explanation for the cause of Dominique's death. His death certificate, dated November 9th, the day the body was found, though he went missing November 5th, lists open head injury as the cause of death. Later, the family was told he died of suffocation, then strangulation, and then a broken neck. I mean, you have the evidence in front of you. You did the fucking autopsy. How are you going to come up with these different causes of freaking death? How? No. I mean, did he have the open head injury? Because that was what was originally stated. But now you're saying suffocation, strangulation, and then a broken neck? Now, maybe the broken neck if he had a head injury. But you're just trying to link this case to Ronald Dominique, the serial killer that's been known in the different parishes. You're just trying to link this. Like, you're changing the cause of death from the open head wound to strangulation. Like, this just drives me. This drives me. It gets under my skin so bad. The family has been trying, and they have been very unsuccessful, since Tinick's death to see the written autopsy report. They should have right to see that autopsy report. That's their son. That is their family. Why can't they see the damn report? Sometimes they are told they can have it soon, and other times they hear they won't be able to see it until the case is solved. The fuck? No. You issued a fucking death certificate. The death certificate stated that it's an open head injury is why he died. But now you're changing the cause of death? No. Let me see the autopsy. Let me see it. Let me get a second opinion, because your shady ass police work is not where it's at. The family remembers Tinick as a hard-working and hard-playing young man. He worked offshore 20 days on and 14 days off, and the schedule suited him. A month of hard work followed by 2 weeks of play. Freedom. And as soon as Pumpkin picked him up from the boat, they would stop for a case of beer. He loved all his nieces and nephews, picking them up from the bus stop and taking them home to play outside or jump on a trampoline. Every day that goes by, I want to see that kid. Veronica, his mom says. I want him to walk up and say, hey, Ma. He loved to order pepperoni pizza and watch movies. Comedy, horror, and action. Everything from Elvis to Bruce Lee. Y'all. Jean-Claude Van Damme and Bruce Lee. They're idols. I promise you. That was Chris and Tinick's idols. Jean-Claude Van Damme and Bruce Lee. And Tinick had a bicycle custom rigged into the low-riding chopper style with oversized wheels and handlebars. It looked crazy. Whenever he came home from work, Tinick would bring with him big bags of fish fillets he had caught from the rig. In Southern Louisiana, we love our fish. Okay. And Pumpkin stated, my brother would give you the shirt off his back to help you out. And you know what? He would. If he could help you, he would. Or try to point you in the direction of someone else who could help you. Tinick was a genuine, kind-hearted soul. The violent intrusion Tinick's slaying has disrupted everyone's life. Veronica sleeps with his old baseball bat, and a 6-year-old niece, particularly attached to Tinick, is in counseling. Pumpkin had to quit his night job because it affected him about his brother's death. And Pumpkin stated it just scares you. Every time Pumpkin returns to Ashland, it literally brings up his anger at his brother's friends. And he says he wants to do something, but he has 3 kids. He can't afford to go to jail. And I feel that. I understand Pumpkin's place. And many of the family's cars are emblemed with Rip Tinick. We also got shirts and hoodies made. I had a white one with a little pink. And this beautiful picture of Tinick at his brother Pumpkin's wedding with this huge smile on his face. And that is the picture that you see posted with this case. It's very, very... It literally details who Tinick was. Like, you could just tell it all over his face. And it creates a disturbing feeling. You wonder, do any of these people staring at you know anything? And Renee, which is Pumpkin's wife, stated the way that she sees it, every dog has its day. One day these people will get caught. They will get what they deserve. Hell yeah. Amen, Renee. One room of Veronica's home is set up as sort of a shrine to her belated son. On one wall, his obituary is tacked next to his old school photos. And on a dresser, his belt encircles his favorite deck of cards and Zippo lighters. His bandanas are pinned around the room. A strip of yellow crime scene tape taken from the site where his body was found dangles near a black heart that reads, "In loving memory, Nicholas Joseph Pellegrin, 1984 to 2005. Y'all, I can't. I am going to end this episode here, and we have covered pretty much all these victims. We have one more victim to cover, and then we're going to discuss a little more in depth on how Ronald Dominique got caught and, the process and everything going through that. Y'all, this case really gets underneath my skin. It still brings tears to my eyes just thinking about these victims, and especially two of these victims that I knew. One really well, and the other as a known associate and a good friend of my brother's. I still can't believe this is true. I'm a type of person who really can't accept death. I feel like they went somewhere, they went on vacation, and you just can't talk to them. Like, I can't believe that someone's gone. Like, it doesn't hit me. It really does not hit me. And this is one of those that I will never really be able to get over. And I can't even imagine how the family feels of their son, their brother, their cousin, their sister, their uncle. Like, I can't. I just know how I feel as a friend of Dominique's, and it's just bad. So, thank y'all for listening. If you enjoyed our show, please rate and review us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to come back. I will have this episode out tomorrow. And I will try to record another episode within the day or so. So they're all back to back and you have to wait too long to finish this one. And until then, this is your host, Sarah Soudier. And like I said, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you have any questions regarding this case, or you want to discuss another case, or you would like me to cover another case, just hit me up. Criminal Behavior Podcast. It's CRIMINAL podcast at gmail.com, or you can reach us on social media at Criminalist Behavior, a Louisiana true crime podcast, or again, you can message on one of these lovely apps, a comment or whatever, and I'll be able to get it. I'm still working on our webpage. Bear with me. I'm having some technical difficulties and time restraints, so bear with me, y'all. Thank y'all for being so patient and kind, and for supporting and following me. I promise y'all I'm getting this content out, and I'm not stopping. So don't think that I done given up, because I'm not stopping. I'm doing this for a hobby of mine, and I believe these cases need to be told. And I really don't care for compensation part. I'm not doing it to get compensated. I'm not doing it to get famous. I'm not doing that. I'm doing it because these cases need to be told. Criminal investigations and crime and law, I mean, it really speaks to me. And I'm on a medical side as well. I went to school for criminal justice. I went to school for medical. So I know both aspects. I worked as a police officer, as a correctional officer, and in the medical field. So again, I have a wide variety of things. So please, if y'all need any information, y'all want to reach, y'all just want to talk, or y'all want to become on the show and be a guest or share your stories, please reach out to me. I love to hear from you. So thank y'all, and I really hope y'all enjoy y'all day. And until next time.